Women's League of Health and Beauty, London, calling. Mrs. Baggett-Stack speaking. Our health and beauty exercises give you 3 important points. 1, continuous exercise. 2, musical movement. 3, joint loosening rather than muscle building. The first sets of exercises will establish the slim-through position of the middle of the body. This slim-through line from the lower back to the abdomen is the pivot from which all the other exercises are developed and must first be thoroughly practiced and understood. Bucking Bronx, ready, A, B, A, B.
My mother, Mrs. Baggett-Stack, trained in her health exercises a long time ago, before the First War, with a woman called Mrs. Joseph Conn, who practiced remedial health exercises which helped people who were ill and so on. And my mother had been quite delicate as a child, so she went to her in order to improve her health. And it did improve her health to such an extent that she realized what a marvelous system it was. It had been worked out by a doctor originally. And so she decided to train. And then she taught for a year or so before the war, and then married and went out to India. My father was in a Gurkha regiment. So it lay fallow for quite a long time until after the war she came to live in London. My father was killed in the First War, and I was quite young, of course. And she started holding classes for children in the drawing room of the house we had in Holland Park. And it had a beautiful garden, so we used to have classes in the garden as well. And she also had private classes for grown-up people, and most of the women she was dealing with were quite well-off women. But the class that she really enjoyed most was a class she held for business girls, girls working in shops and offices. She felt those were the ones who really needed her work. And that was when she had the idea of setting up the Women's League of Health and Beauty in 1930. The League started with just £16, which was produced by the 16 original members. And there was no capital. She depended on the numbers in the classes to cover the expenses. But she realized that they were bursting out of all the halls that they were in, that we were hiring in various parts of London. And to have a headquarters was terribly important. And so she took this headquarters at 43 Great Portland Street, in the centre of London, just very near Oxford Circus, and signed a lease for £1,000 a year, which was a lot of money in those days, especially when you didn't have it. So it was a real act of faith. But it proved itself because having the headquarters joined everything together, and the students were able to train there in these lovely halls that were available. And we had classes every night of the week.
Ready, B. Breathe in through nose, breathe out through lips, slowly, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in, ribs lift, breathe out, ribs collapse, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, exhale, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in.
Her book was published in 1931, which was illustrated with pictures of her system of exercises, and she called it Building the Body Beautiful. But then she realized that that was too difficult a title. It was too highfalutin and too hard to remember and so on. And so then she thought the League of Health, but that seemed to her very dull, you know, the League of Health. And so she added the word beauty because she thought all women liked beauty.
Breathing exercises for slimming the bust and the waist and giving the light upward buoyant lift of the ribs.
I trained in her training college, and I had 3 years training there. Well, of course, I'd done the exercises ever since I was 4 years old in her children's class. And that was when Peggy and Joan St. Lowe first came into my life, because they were members of my mother's children's class. And they were tremendous teachers in the League. They taught the students, and they were sort of figureheads. And before the League started, actually, we were doing some photographs for my mother's book, and we were doing the pictures on the beach. And 3 girls leapt. They did this leap in unison. And when my mother saw the pictures, she thought that first one is a wonderful position. That was Peggy. And so she chose it to go into her book. And then later it was chosen as the emblem of the League.
Breathe in, elbows back. Breathe out, elbows forward. Inhale, elbows back. Exhale, elbows forward.
Pat Rowlinson, one of our foremost teachers, joined the students. At that time we had about 50 of them in the training school.
I joined the Women's League of Health and Beauty in 1936, and I went straight in as a student. The training consisted of all sorts of different subjects in the dancing world. We did tap dancing, national dancing, as well as our basic system of exercise and choreography. We were definitely influenced a lot by the ancient Greek dance, by contemporary dance a little bit later on as it became fashionable, and Mrs. Stack definitely wanted to add as much as she could to her basic system.
She was very much influenced by the Greek ideal, health of body, mind and spirit, not just body but the whole person, which is now of course quite popular, but in those days it was quite a new idea. One of the statues that we studied was the Greek statue of the Discopolis. A picture of me was taken of it, which is in my mother's book, and I had to go to the British Museum to look at the original, and she was absolutely adamant about it being exactly right. And then Marjorie Duncombe, who was my mother's partner, produced movements to correspond with the friezes.
One of the important things in our training was anatomy and physiology, so we had a very good idea of the working of the human body, and we were able to help those people who had no idea on how to cope with more graceful movements, more mobile joints. Most of us, I think, had worn corsets, and all that went by the board. You know, you use your abdominal muscles, you shouldn't have to have them held in all the time.
There hadn't been any systems of exercises as such for women. There was dance, of course, but there were exercise systems for men. There was the famous one of Piers Ling, which was taught in all the schools, and that came originally from Sweden. And then there was one called Muller from Germany, but that was sort of very strong health and strength kind of exercise, you know, not suitable for women. And one thing that she thought was the most essential was that women should have a system of their own.
In the 1930s, there was very little a woman could do to get any kind of exercise, a little bit of sport possibly, but generally tied to the house and the domesticities. And Mrs. Stack could see that the health of the nation needed something that would bring out the women and give them a totally different life.
Head steady, pelvis only moves. Ready? A, B. A, B, A, B, A, B.
I joined the League in September 1933. One of my sisters worked at the telephone exchange in Whitehall, and one of her fellow workers there, she went to a class and encouraged her to go, so we both went to Mortimer Street when the classes were held there. And we joined straight away.
I think there was nothing else like it. It was quite a pioneer movement. And I think it just filled a gap. I mean, women were becoming much more open-minded and working and everything like that, and they were becoming independent. And something like the League appealed to them enormously.
It suited people of all ages. There was no apparatus work to frighten people off. So you could do whatever your own body would let you do, so everybody could join in.
D. Right leg raise, 3, 4, down, 6, 7, 8. Left leg raise, 3, 4, down, 6.
I went to Joan St. Lowe's classes on a Tuesday evening, and she would tell you what the exercise was. She would then demonstrate, and you would follow.
Toes, heels, toes, heels, toes, heels, toes, heels.
We had elementary, medium and advanced, and anyone who came to join always went into the elementary class.
The exercises were graded so that you did all the basic ones in the elementary class, so that you learnt about central control and right way to breathe and all that, and then you moved on up to more difficult ones.
Head movements ready. A. Forward, back, forward.
I joined the League in 1935. I went to a dancing class, and the dancing teacher there joined the League, and she told me about it, and I thought, oh, I'd like to join that. So I joined, and I used to go to Beckenham class and Bromley and Catford, all during the week.
It depended a lot of the area where you were teaching as who you got into your classes. And if you went into any centre, you got a total mix of women.
The ones that we had mostly were working in offices and sitting at a desk all day, so it counteracted that.
I found that sitting, taking down dictation for hours on end and then going back and typing, your posture does get bad, you know. But of course, as soon as you come to the League, you're taught exactly how to stand with your tummy in and your seat tucked under. And in the end, it becomes natural.
I think it gave women a terrific freedom. And although they still ran their homes and did everything perfectly well, they had that one day a week or perhaps 2 evenings a week when they could go out and do their own thing, their own interest, and at the same time improve themselves.
Back, F, cross, right, left, circle right, up, down.
My job in the 20s and 30s was in couture tailoring. You don't work on the table, you work on your knee so that you're doubled over. Therefore, the classes helped you breathing and your posture as well.
Swing right, ribard. Swing left, ribard. Right, left, right.
Mrs. Stack was very keen that everyone should come to the classes, and that was why they were really run very cheaply.
The classes were sixpence, which was very cheap even in those days. And you had to join. You paid 2 and 6 for a year's subscription and 2 and 6 for a badge. Hanging from the badge was a tag, which was made of leather, and you had a stud you pressed in for each year that you remember.
Founded in 1930, the Health and Beauty League is scheduled for a new high in popular support.
Hyde Park was a very fast display when the League was only 3 months old. We had about 300 or 400 members at that time, but I think about 160 performed, and they were led in by Peggy and myself. And our dog came with us. And we were escorted by 2 London policemen into the cockpit, which is where it took place.
We had a song called Marching Feet, and I can remember my younger sister and I used to march up and down the garden paths singing Marching Feet. I think the neighbours must have thought we were mad.
Girls of the League, we are marching now in unity.
To get to Hyde Park, we had to march down Oxford Street in our little outdoor uniforms, which were very short then, velvet black skirts, white capes, and we had a police escort who marched us straight into Hyde Park to the cockpit.
The next thing was a show in the Albert Hall, which was, again, quite a big challenge.
You had to have an audition first, and then, if you were lucky, you were chosen.
I used to see other people and I'd be walking along with my suitcase and think, oh, aren't they unlucky? They're not going along to be in the show like I am.
We had a varied programme. We had dancing as well as exercises, and we managed to fill the Albert Hall. Then we had performances in the Albert Hall every year from then on.
We'd have hundreds of people on the floor from all over the country and also from abroad.
Noble aim of this fine body of women is to show the uninitiated that health and beauty is another way of saying calisthenics. Poise and elegance, the poetry of motion expressed by splendid specimens of British womanhood.
These girls had never met before, and yet they came in at different entrances, and it just all came together in one item. At 1 minute, they might be doing something, the whole sea of black, and then they'd do something else, and it'd be a sea of white with blouses. It was really wonderful.
It was organised really from headquarters. Our head teachers, Joan and Peggy St. Lowe, together with Prunella.
We had to work out exactly what they were going to do, and we gave them very good instructions, and then they rehearsed in their own areas.
It could be hard work, rehearsals. I would get home perhaps at midnight. I took part in several displays starting from Olympia.
Out, Up.
My mother became ill in 1934 and she died in 1935, and she was very ill for 6 months. So during that time I had an opportunity to gradually work in and take over responsibility.
Up. Finish and out.
The year my mother died in 1935, we had already decided to have the show in Olympia, which is a huge arena, in order to be able to contain all the members that wanted to come. So I had to organise that show shortly after my mother's death. So that was another big one. And then even Olympia wasn't big enough, so then we went to Wembley.
It was absolutely magic to be in those shows. The first display I was in was at Wembley in 1936.
If you've a few inches here and there you want to put on or take off, here's how to get them transferred.
We had 2 shows in the arena there, and there was about 5,000 members in each of them. One year we decided to have a Greek item.
We put on a Pyrrhic item, which meant that some of us were fighting with swords and shields in the middle of the arena.
We thought it'd be fun to have some chariots driving around the cinder track, and so we hired a couple of chariots.
Each pulled by 2 horses that would gallop round the arena during this item. The item started, and this was during the dress rehearsal in the afternoon. The music was in full swing, and so were the warriors, and one of the horses bolted straight across the arena.
And so women were rushing to right and left, and the chariots were charging through. It was the most dreadful moment. However, nobody was hurt, but we couldn't have the chariots in the afternoon.
To the Empire Pool from every corner of Britain come 2,000 girls propounding health and beauty, banded together by Britain's first perfect woman, Prunella Stack.
She was always in the newspapers as Prunella, the perfect girl, and she really was. She just radiated health.
It was rather embarrassing. My boyfriends all used to tease me about it, of course, and I took it with a very light sense of humour.
Marching feet, marching feet, marching.
The uniform was very avant-garde. Nobody had ever seen women in anything like it. However, we always had to look very decent, so they were not too short to start with. They got shorter as the years went by.
The tighter they were, the nicer they looked, because they made the tummy look very flat. We used to make our own. They had the patterns, and they were usually made with black sort of furnishing satin. There was always competition as to who got the tightest fitting ones.
The last display at Wembley was in 1939, just before the war, and we all had the feeling that the war was coming, you know. It was a beautiful sunny evening, I remember, to begin with, and then at the end it got darker and darker. The classes in London were kept going by Peggy and Joan St. Lowe, and they kept them going all the time in spite of air raids.
And we used to have the classes in the basement, and you'd hear the old air raid warnings going off, and you would stay there until the all clear came.
They had to change their halls from week to week as one hall got destroyed.
We would meet at a given point to start with, because we never knew where we'd be.
Nearly all our halls were requisitioned, so there was virtually nowhere to go and teach.
I think about 50 centres remained open, and some of those were run by League members themselves. Nearly all the teachers were young. They were calling up age, and they mostly went into the services.
We had a lot of very good advanced members by then, women who were too old to go and join up, and they carried the classes on for us. We called them practice class leaders, and they did a wonderful job.
Well, that would have been a tragedy if the classes had stopped. Used to hear the bombs coming and the planes coming over, you know. But we kept going. When I look back now, I don't know how I did it, because, you know, I am a little scared rabbit, really, but I didn't let that stand in the way.
After the war, we built up the League again. The first thing to do was to start the training school again, which we did, and to train new teachers. And a lot of the old teachers came back from after their war work, and so classes opened throughout the country. We never again had such a big membership, but we had quite a large membership. It was Women's League of Health and Beauty still for quite a long time, but we felt we must change the name and make it more contemporary. And so we took the name Health and Beauty Exercise. And I think that was quite an adequate name, but now, in fact, we are changing it again. Health and Beauty was completely contemporary for the 30s. Fitness is contemporary now.
There's no doubt about it, it had a terrific effect on thousands of women, and they themselves did say how much it had helped them.
You feel so much better, really, when you're doing the exercises.
I don't think I'd been healthy as I am now. I should be 87 in August. It's always been part of me.
We had such a wonderful pioneering spirit, and we were very much a group who felt we were doing something really important. And so that gave us a kind of link, which has always lasted.
I would have had a most dull life without the League.
From the moment that I joined the League, I had some wonderful friends, and they have endured right through my life. We still meet up, and we've had wonderful lives together.
We still use the basic exercises that are described in my mother's book and that are the basis of our system, because they don't date. The body is always the same, whether it's 1930 or 1990. And so things like suppleness and joint loosening rather than muscle building, and good poise of the body and good body alignment, that's never going to change. So we have that as our basis. But we have actually modernized the movement a lot. And I feel that change is very important. One can't stay in one spot. Otherwise, you know, change, movement is life. And so we've tried to live up to that.
This is the girl that Jane was.
This is the League that Jane joined.
This is the price that Jane paid. £0.50 subscription, 3 and 6 for a badge, and 6pence for every class.
And this is the girl that Jane is. Ha ha ha, he, Leaguer, League, don't I love thee?
Ha ha ha, he, League, oh League, don't I love thee? League of Health appeals to me, and as for beauty, wait and see.
A League of Health appeals to me, and as for beauty, wait and see.